morning, I'm Maiki Oreta and you're watching Basis Points, where we dive deep into the numbers and the stories that drive our economy and shape our world. Bank lending in the Philippines grows at its fastest pace in 2 years. Internet tycoon Dennis Uy aims to take over the country's air traffic management system. Can Philippine shares keep up their 5-week winning streak? We'll discuss this and more with Luis Limlingan, the head of sales at Regina Capital Development Corporation. Plus, Filipino contemporary artist Ronald Ventura achieves another record-breaking sale at the Christie's Hong Kong auction house. First, let's check on how markets in Asia are performing as we start the new trading week. So far, markets are off to a positive start, lifted by the soft landing narrative in the United States following a stronger than expected jobs report. Japan's Nikkei 225 is up 2%, while South Korea's Kospi is up by 0.3%. Australia's ASX 200 is holding steady, remaining flat. On Wall Street, futures tied to the Dow Jones and S&P 500 and the Nasdaq are trading sideways with a slight negative bias. This follows a volatile week that ended with modest gains thanks to a strong U.S. jobs report for September. Over in Europe, markets ended mixed last Friday. The UK's FTSE 100 closed flat, while Germany's DAX rose 0.6% and France's CAC 40 climbed 0.9%. Over in the commodities market, oil prices are slipping as traders weigh the possibility of Israel retaliating against Iran, despite U.S. President Joe Biden urging against a strike on Iranian oil fields. Brent crude is down by 0.5% to $77.64 a barrel. Meanwhile, gold is edging lower, pressured by a stronger U.S. dollar following the robust jobs data. Now, bank lending grew at its fastest pace in nearly 2 years in August, showing strong economic activity. Data from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas shows outstanding loans of big banks rose nearly 11% year-on-year to 12.3 trillion pesos. This is faster than the 10.4% growth in July and the strongest since December 2022. Monthly growth remained flat at 0.8%. Loans to businesses jumped nearly 10% to 10.5 trillion pesos, while consumer credit rose by nearly 25% to 1.5 trillion pesos. However, non-performing loans hit a 2-year high of 3.6%. Subsidies to state-owned and controlled firms dropped by half in August. The Bureau of Treasury reports that financial support to government-owned and controlled corporations, or GOCCs, fell to 9.1 billion pesos in August from 18.9 billion a year ago. Only the National Irrigation Administration and Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation have received over 1 billion pesos. Year-to-date, total subsidies to GOCCs reached 87 billion pesos, down by nearly 25%. Now, the Philippines may need to import more chicken meat next year as local supply continues to fall short of demand. The U.S. Department of Agriculture's Foreign Agricultural Service projects that chicken meat imports could rise to 480,000 metric tons in 2025. That's a 2% increase from this year's estimate of 470,000 metric tons. The USDA attributes this growth to Malacanang's executive order, which keeps the import duty on mechanically deboned chicken at 5%. This move is expected to help manage the strong demand, making imported chicken products more affordable, especially for bulk buyers like restaurants and food processors. Data from the Bureau of Animal Industry shows that through July, the country imported over 255 million kilograms of chicken, marking a 2.4% increase from last year. Now, Clark Network and Technology, owned by billionaire Dennis Anthony Uy, is offering to manage the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines' air traffic system, or CAAP, for nearly 30 billion pesos. Data from the Public-Private Partnership Center shows that CAAP is now moving forward with a detailed evaluation of Clark's proposal. The project aims to improve air traffic safety, operational efficiencies, and reliability. The Transportation Department says a study by the World Bank and the International Finance Corporation on how to proceed with the air traffic services management will be completed by next year. Filipino contemporary artist Ronald Ventura continues to break records, this time at the Christie's Hong Kong auction house. Christie's reports that Ventura's painting, State of Bloom, sold for 36.7 million Hong Kong dollars, shattering his previous record by 88%. The painting was initially estimated to sell between 1.8 to 2.8 million Hong Kong dollars, but it surpassed the lowest estimate by almost 20 times. Ventura is now one of the most sought-after artists in the region's art market. Christie's describes State of Bloom as a work that fuses elements of nature, machinery, and everything in between to explore themes of transformation, identity, and the intersection of organic and synthetic life. Now, it's another busy week ahead for global financial markets. Here's a quick rundown of what we can expect. On Wednesday, New Zealand's central bank is expected to follow the U.S. Federal Reserve's lead and cut interest rates by half a point. The Reserve Bank of New Zealand, usually cautious about global easing, already lowered rates by 25 basis points back in August. On Thursday, France's new government will present its long-awaited budget to the parliament. The plan aims to slash 60 billion euros to rein in the deficit, but all eyes are on whether Prime Minister Michael Barnier can pass it through a divided parliament, sparking concerns over the government's stability. Also on Thursday, U.S. time, September inflation data will be released. The U.S. third quarter earnings season will also heat up this week with big names like JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and Delta Airlines reporting their figures. We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line. Welcome back to Basis Points Trading at the Philippine Stock Exchange. Opened a few minutes ago. Let's take a look at the initial figures. Right now, the market is up by 0.4% to 74.99. The broader all shares index up as well, up by 0.3% to 40.53. So far, we're seeing gains in the industrial holding firms, services, and property counters, while the financials and mining and oil counters are slightly lower. Now, meanwhile, the foreign exchange market, the peso opens weaker from its previous close of 56.30, opening at 56.64 against the greenback. Now, with us today to talk about the market and more is the head of sales at Regina Capital Development Corporation, Luis Limlingan. Hi, Luis. Good morning, and thanks for being here with us.
Hi, happy Monday. Maiki, thank you for having me.
Happy Monday indeed. The market's up. Do you think the market's going to be sustaining its momentum? September inflation came in, surprise to the upside at 1.9%, marking the first time in 4 years that inflation has fallen below 2%. Luis, do you think the market's going to be sustaining its momentum on account of this?
Perhaps I'm the wrong person to ask because I work right in the thick of things, and for me, it's always an opportunity to buy. So probably when I say it, there's going to be some bias to it. But we hope that it's going to continue. Of course, there are some events that might have some buying opportunities in the sense that probably some investors might keep to cash while waiting, which is the US CPI, which is going to be out, I think, on the 10th of October. Remember, we just released ours on Friday. It was much better than expected, and I think that's what's already fueling this momentum early in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Talking about fueling this momentum, let's take a look at the central bank. How much room does this give them to cut interest rates, given that inflation is cooling? It has cooled even below 2% for September.
Well, I think, again, this gives central bank more room to maneuver tactically when they want to cut rates. Some say that they could cut rates 50 basis points. Others say maybe it's going to be staggered, one 25 basis point cut next meeting and another before the year ends. But at least now there's a lot of, they can really figure out much more calmly how to cut interest rates, given that inflation is already benign. Mm-hmm. The target or the acceptable range was 2 to 4%, and now they're at 1.9%. So this is well below what they expected. very, very good reading at least for September, and everyone hopes that it continues for the final quarter of 2024.
How much of a rate cut are you expecting from the Banco Central, Luis, at Regina Capital? How much are you guys expecting, given that inflation has cooled to 1.9% in September?
Well, we're not discounting the possibility that there could be another 50-point basis cut. But again, I think they have to consider that it's not a foregone conclusion that we've escaped the problems of inflation, given that there is conflict happening inside the Middle East. They also want to watch what happens to a lot of the business activity. Will lending pick up? If it picks up, then I think there's no need to be that aggressive. Will inflation also suddenly spike? Because again, if the interest rates are suddenly very low, this might good that it's going to stimulate activity, but maybe demand will be too much that the supply might not be able to keep up. So I think they're also trying to be vigilant as well. And then let's not forget what's happening outside. Again, the US, how are they going to respond when they have their meeting and after the inflation report that comes out on the 10th? The jobs report was much better than everyone expected last week. So I hope, again, the positive data keeps on continuing.
Given this positive data, Luis, what are the projections of yours that you're going to be revising on account of the lower than expected September inflation figures?
Well, again, we're hoping that again the inflation remains benign, given that fuel prices, despite the conflict happening in the Middle East, hasn't really pushed up oil prices. I think they're saying that as far as we are concerned, being a net importer, I think because they were fearful that the economy of China was showing signs of weakness, is that again this would also trickle down into commodity prices, and that's what we've seen with the price of oil. But again, we don't want it so weak because again, China is a huge trading partner to a lot of its neighbors, and again, it's really trying to find that balance now that you don't want inflation or you don't want commodity prices too high, but at the same time, if it's too low, that's already sending a signal that the economy is weakening.
That's right. Balance is key. 3 more months until the end of the year. We've got October, November, December. What is your full year outlook for inflation, GDP, and ultimately for the PSEI, Luis?
We're still revisiting because again, all the data that came out in the last 2 months has been much better than expected. I think for GDP, we were above 6%, so we're maintaining that. I think there's a possibility that it can meet or beat that, given that the second quarter was 6.3%, so much better than everyone expected. Inflation, probably we're going to be looking at it because at the beginning of the year or up to the first half, we were looking at around 3.5%. So probably the fourth quarter, if it's 2 or below, we're probably going to have to revise our estimate downward, which is good as well. In terms of the PSE, I think we're just going to give it 1 more month because we want to see again. One is how the Fed is going to respond and what's going to be their rhetoric moving forward. Second, of course, is the U.S. election. And the outcome of that will probably set the precedent as to how funds are going to be repositioning next year, as to which economies I think are going to be the main beneficiaries of whoever presidential candidate wins the election.
Okay, now Luis, in light of the changes in the macroeconomic environment, cooling inflation, lower interest rates, and the lower reserve requirement ratio of banks, and plus how are you telling investors to position ahead of the elections in the U.S., in the Philippines? There's a lot to take into consideration right now. What are you telling investors to do?
Well, again, we just say be vigilant on the dates, especially when it comes to anything related to inflation and employment in the U.S. Take notes again of the meetings. Not just that, but I think leading up to it, there are always speeches given by the Fed presidents, respectively. Even this week is going to be very heavy. So you have to read into the rhetoric and how that will send a signal to the market. We have to always take note that whatever you view, I think there's usually a consensus on the street as to how they see uh, all leading economic indicators. It's whether it's the inflation, the interest rate, and so on. So how is this going to align with your projections as well? And that's how you're going to position in the next few weeks.
All right, thank you for your time this morning, Luis Limlingan, the head of sales at Regina Capital Development Corporation.
Thank you very much, Mikey.
We're taking a quick breather. Basis Points will be right back. Welcome back to Basis Points. Despite the devastating impact of a powerful typhoon last month, Vietnam reports its strongest quarterly economic growth in 2 years. Gross domestic product, or GDP, there grew by 7.4% year on year in the third quarter, outpacing the 7.1% expansion in the second quarter. This growth was driven by strong exports, industrial production, and increasing foreign investments, which helped offset the damage caused by Typhoon Yagi. The typhoon, known in the Philippines as Enteng, killed over 300 people in Vietnam and caused widespread power disruptions. In other news, Foxconn, the world's largest contract electronics maker, posts record third quarter revenue. The Taiwanese company's revenue jumped 20% year on year to 1.9 trillion Taiwan dollars, or 57.3 billion US dollars, surpassing market expectations of 1.8 trillion Taiwanese dollars. Now, Foxconn, which counts Apple and artificial intelligence chip maker NVIDIA among its clients, attributes this growth to the strong demand for AI servers. Before we wrap up, here's a heartwarming story of giving back. Star Olivia Rodrigo is donating all of the proceeds from her sold-out Manila concert to a nonprofit organization dedicated to healthcare. While in the Philippines, Olivia visited Japaigo, a group that provides crucial healthcare services to women and girls. She says that she was deeply inspired by their work. Her first Manila concert took place at the Philippine Arena on Saturday, with tickets priced at just 1,500 pesos each. Olivia called it the most special show and the biggest she's ever performed, adding that her visit to Manila was her most meaningful trip. And that's it for Basis Points. I'm Maiki Oreta. We'll be back tomorrow for more news on the financial markets and more. Keep it here on BNC, the Billionario News Channel, always on top.